You guys don't have pickup, do you? You have to take it to the center.
So we have a good behavior now.
Yeah, so I pay per trash bag, and I, because the cart.
Okay, we're live.
Okay, got a minute though. Okay. Costs like $17 a month last time I priced for a trash cart, or $2.50 a bag, and I have 2 bags a month. So, but meanwhile, I go to recycle once or twice a week.
Okay, we're all set, Kathy.
Okay. We can call this meeting to order of the regularly scheduled meeting of the Leelanau County Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. And we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll do roll call. Dennis Boucher,
Here.
Rick Foster,
Present.
John Aaron's,
Here.
T. Epitaxidius.
Excused, can't make it today.
Okay, Chuck Janik,
Here.
Ty Wessel,
Here.
and Director Trudy Gala,
Present?
and Kathy Egan Chair is here. So we go into public comment. There's no public present, but if anybody has any comment, they can call into 231-256-8109. And if the phone rings, we will stop where we are and take public comment. Director comments, Trudy.
2 quick things. First, he sent me an email stating he couldn't attend today, and he also had reviewed all the documents. He just wanted to say that he concurred with the Envirologic proposal for the TIP accounts management, as long as TIP spreadsheets could be used by the BRA, meaning they were not proprietary. And if I felt that I or someone else could manage those spreadsheets in the event that Envirologic is not the consultant in the future. So he's concurring with that proposal that you see later on the agenda. And then the other comment I wanted to make is we reached out to Mr. Johnson from West Shore Partners on Brownfield plan down in Elmwood Township. And just trying to get some information from him to see if they were still moving along or if we were going to terminate that Brownfield plan, because nothing has happened. He said, as he had spoken with me previously, they'd still like to preserve the Brownfield plan for the property. Things are just starting to move again from the shutdown of COVID, and he felt that they would start next month bringing people back to work. And then I just let him know that we had a meeting here today, but this is not on the agenda as any action item. So I wanted to just give you that quick update.
What was the date on that email? Curiosity.
From Mr. Johnson, July 19th, it was yesterday he came in. I had sent it to him back in beginning part of June. And then we talked on his wife and I talked on the phone. And then he followed up yesterday with that email.
So by August 19th, we'll see something.
Hopefully.
I say we revisit the idea of what to do as a next step in the last quarter of the year. That way we'll know if some
things actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're on to consideration of today's agenda. There's no known changes to it. Correct, Trudy?
Correct.
So we can entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So move.
Second.
Was that Rick?
Yes.
Motion by Rick, second by Dennis. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Agenda is adopted. Do any members have a conflict of interest that they want to bring forward? Hearing none, we move on to May 18th meeting minutes.
Will be approved and presented.
We have a motion to approve as presented from Ty,
Second.
second from John. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Minutes are adopted. We have a consent agenda presented, one item on that from EnviroLogic. If no one wants any discussion on this, we can approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion by John,
Or.
support by Ty. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, we're on to old business, of which there is none, on to new business, which is all TIF. I'll turn it over to Jeff Hawkins to walk us through. We have the, starting with 2 Ps, Brownfield plan and Suns Bay. Well, starting with the, sorry, page 8 and 9. Packet.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Good to be here in person. So yeah, in your packet, pages 8 and 9 is a general memo regarding the TIF tracking system development, kind of a summary of things that have really been discussed at previous meetings and actions that you've taken, and kind of where we're at today with a few things. First and foremost, the system is really in place now with respect to the 4 brownfield plans that we have, 2 Ps, G-Track, Leland, and actually West Shore. There's some things that we're still cleaning up with West Shore, and we anticipate having another memo to you next month with respect to West Shore tax increment. Part of that too is waiting to hear what's going to happen with that development. As Trudy indicated, we were, contemplating canceling that or abolishing that plan. And that may be something that still may come to bear here, depending on, what their requirements are and what the scope of the project's going to be and so forth. So in May, I think we presented the reimbursement analyses to you with respect to those active plans. And we have updated the G-Track and Leland residential, which are in your packets. I think we have them on page 11 and 12. We'll talk about those a little bit. There were a couple things that we wanted to update with respect to, as you recall, when we are capturing any of the state education tax, 50% of that goes to the state Brownfield revolving fund. And I think we had talked about several that needed that capture, but after going back through those again, we realized that really there's only one plan that applies to, and that's 2 Ps. The other plans were adopted prior to the change in the law, which occurred, I believe, in 2018. So we're not required to send that 50% to the state. And at this point in time, we've spoken to MEDC, who manages that Brownfield revolving fund and those payments of state education tax dollars. And we've confirmed that the Leelanau County Brownfield Authority is up to date with all those. And so we should be fine there. What will happen is that when we do the annual reporting, which is required by the end of August for the active Brownfield plans that you have in place, we'll disclose what if any state education taxes were captured for the projects, which would be 2 Ps basically, and then eventually MEDC will actually send an invoice, if there is one due, to the Brownfield Authority for payment. So there's nothing we really have to do other than the annual reporting, which gives them the information to invoice the authority. So basically, some of the updates that we did to G-Track and to Leland and the reimbursement analyses that were presented to you in May, I think it was, is we removed those 50% payments to the state education tax. That's really the only update that occurred on those. So available funds that are shown in the reimbursement analysis really are for payments pending for the approved expenses to repay the county in full, and also a remainder of funds that are going to go to the LCBRA, particularly on the G-Track project. And then we've got some decisions to be made with respect to the Leland residential project. West Shore, as I indicated, is kind of a little bit on hold there. I have a separate memo that we'll talk about next with respect to 2Ps, just to get into a little bit more of the weeds of that. But from more of a general perspective, last month Trudy and I and Teresa Searles from my office met with Darcy Weaver, the Chief Deputy Treasurer, to discuss the Brownfield capture process and try to have that initial conversation, or again, conversation with them as to what they have on their records from a standpoint of Brownfield plans in the system, and just some general questions that we felt may not have been done previously. And so we were able to get a list from Darcy of what projects they have and what parcel numbers are there. We've compared those parcel numbers, and we've got a couple of corrections that need to be made because particularly in the Leland residential project, there were some parcels that were combined, and some changes that were made. It didn't really affect the amount of tax that was captured or what's going to get paid out. It's just more semantics with respect to ensuring that our tables that we created have the appropriate information in them from a standpoint of parcel IDs. The one thing, though, that was a conversation that I know we wanted to clarify with the Treasurer's Department was on sites where taxes are not paid or delinquent, that the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority should be made whole from the Delinquent Tax Revolving Fund, the DTRF fund. And past practice has not necessarily done that. But we did confirm the understanding the Treasurer's Office has, that if there are delinquent taxes on a parcel that is in an active Brownfield plan, that the DTRF fund will be used to provide the appropriate amount of capture that should be brought to the Brownfield Authority to make them whole. So we did confirm that with the Treasurer's Office going forward. We also talked with Darcy and also with Trudy about conducting some training with respect to the tax capture system that we have in place, and she seemed to be very interested in doing that. So as part of our proposal, we'll be talking about so forth. We anticipate doing an initial training with particularly the treasurers that are, or finance directors from the communities that we have active plans in. Likely do a virtual meeting with them to kind of go over the system, make sure they understand how it works, answer any questions that they may have with respect to how they have it noted in their systems for capture on a Brownfield site. And hopefully eliminate some of the confusion that we've seen in previous years with respect to what can be captured, should be captured, and what shouldn't be captured, particularly. And hopefully that training will be useful because, at the same time, we'll be sending out statements of accounts for those Brownfield plans to ensure that all our numbers are, making sense to everybody, and make any corrections that need to be made now, so we're not having to go back and try to figure this out later. So that's a good thing, and I think that'll be an interesting opportunity to have that conversation. So basically on page 9 in your packet, it's the second page of that general TIF tracking memo summary update. Basically, there's a table there that has been updated that shows the 4 active Brownfield plans, and it shows the tax increment revenue, the TIR, tax increment revenue received to date through those Brownfield plans. It shows the ineligible captures that were received, And you'll note in that column that back in actually March, I believe, there was, at least for G-Track and for Leland Residential, there were motions to return those ineligible captures. And I believe in claims and accounts today that has been in there for you to act on as well. So those payments can be made. I do believe, though, with 2Ps, I don't believe we had a motion with respect to the ineligible captures received on that one. So we're going to need to act on that. And then action items really would be to decide how to disperse the funds, both to, well, the amount to the state Brownfield revolving fund, I believe, is a non-issue. That's already been done, but the funds available for distribution to the various parties. Just as a reiteration, as far as 2Ps is concerned, we've never received any developer expenses from them for any activities that they did. We'd asked on numerous occasions, nothing came forward. So basically, the available funds should be used to reimburse eligible expenses that were incurred by the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority on that project at this point.
To your knowledge, do those developer expenses ever sundown? I mean, if you go back year after year after, you know, that's kind of what you're required to do.
You know, is there like a
Time at which you just decide it's
yeah
just out of curiosity.
yeah, I'm trying to think what the term is. Yeah, but yeah, I would say that if taxes are paid and that the funds are available, that you could act on those if they came forward. But at some point in time, the plan's going to end. And once those dollars have been received and we've handled all the obligations, then as an authority, you can terminate the plan, and then there's really no recourse on their part. Yeah. Regarding Leland Residential, a motion was approved back in March to return ineligible collections. We're still working with them a little bit on the parcel ID discrepancies because of some of the parcel combinations, but that's really not impacting any of the decisions that you really need to make today. The developer has $38,862.50 in eligible expenses. And obviously the Brownfield Authority has a significant more in eligible expenses between the Eagle loan that was incurred, and then the EPA revolving loan fund grant that was utilized on that site as well. So there's a question as to whether or not, do we use a portion of those $87,900 and some dollars to reimburse the match that was paid by the developer for the revolving loan fund grant from EPA? Or do we exclusively use those funds to pay down the debt that the Brownfield Authority has? Technically, when we look at the development agreement, basically states that loans and other debt should be paid prior to payments to the developer. And I think that's similar to your TIF reimbursement policy that's approved as well. But I know that there was some question as to whether or not that might be something to consider. Now, I know there's no prepayment penalty from a standpoint of the Eagle loan, which was, Trudy was successful in renegotiating terms on that. And I believe there's a, I don't want to jump ahead, but there is a invoice basically from the state for, I think, a $25,000 payment for that loan. I guess the other thing for consideration is with respect to the EPA revolving loan fund grant. Keep in mind the whole intent of that grant was to be used to capitalize a revolving loan fund for the county for future projects. So that's the intent of reimbursing those costs. I haven't nailed this down yet, but there is truly a point in time when, to some extent, a decision could be made as to whether or not those funds are reimbursed into a revolving fund or not. So that debt obligation is something we would want to probably look at some point in time as to whether or not you've really met EPA's obligations and no longer have to really I don't want to say honor the debt, but reimburse it to the revolving fund here locally, versus actually going forward with that and trying to capitalize a revolving fund. So that's something that we'll have to talk about. But from a standpoint, it's really the terms to repay that EPA revolving loan fund are really held by you with respect to how and when you do that. The Eagle loan obviously has terms that have been negotiated under contract that have to be honored. And then at some point in time, the developer will have to be paid for their match as well. So we basically have about $87,000, almost $88,000 that we need to disperse one way or the other. Before I move on to 2Ps, do you want me to, you have any questions, I guess, or any conversation on?
Should I ask one, Kathy? Jeff, I'm just thinking here is that 20% out of the EPA revolving loan fund. I'm not recalling right now, how did the county put their 20% match? Did you do in kind, or was that extra dollars that we have to do?
I don't want to say it was in kind.
Okay.
I don't know that any money was exchanged per se. I can verify that, Trudy, but I'm pretty sure it was.
That sounds familiar to me too.
And if I could just make a comment back on when beginning on the TIF, and you were talking about the Brownfield being made whole. We did get a check last week from the treasurer's office, first time ever, for delinquent tax for being made whole, and I didn't get the spreadsheet at the same time, so I was waiting for that. So that check has not been deposited yet, but we did get money for back taxes, which would make us whole.
For several sites or just one?
Well, I don't have this, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't, okay.
Print out yet, I got the check first, and so I will share that with you guys so
Yeah.
that you can track it as well.
Okay, terrific. Okay. Clear as mud?
All right, so let's move on to do one at a time. We'll go with 2Ps. The smallest.
Yeah, so 2Ps, page 10 is another memo separate to that because there were a fair number of corrections that needed to be made on those. And as I noted previously, you had already acted on, well, you haven't acted on 2Ps. You did for Leland Residential and G-Track, but not 2Ps. So basically, just to run through that, I'm going to kind of just reiterate what's in the memo here, but we've got a couple things going on here. One was initially that the village did not capture taxes that are owed to the Brownfield Authority back in 2017 and 2018 to the tune of about $895.31. So with respect to that, and I've got some recommendations that we can look at here at the end, but there was a debate, I don't know, a conversation previously as to we just let that be, or do we actually go back to the township and ask them for those funds? That's a question, I guess, that we have to ask. Similarly, with respect, so that was monies that weren't captured. And then the next bullet were basically bullets are addressing captured or funds that were captured that shouldn't have been captured by the township. So $24.59 were collected in 2018 for the Township Fire and Rescue Building millage. The millage was a bond, which is represented at debt, and therefore is ineligible for collection. The millage ended in 2018, but they still had captured, it's a small amount. And then in 2017-2018, they captured $96.64 in school debt, which is also ineligible. So total ineligible capture to be returned to Suttons Bay Township would be $121.23. And as you can see from the table there, we have total tax increment revenues received was $5,119.20 to date. The $121.23 is the ineligible capture received. Amount that we've paid to date to the state Brownfield revolving fund of $388.40. And so you have about $4,600 available to disperse. There's a couple options. Obviously, one of the recommendations is we recommend that you return the ineligible capture. Might as well keep your books clean. It may throw them in a tizzy with respect to receiving its extra funds, but I don't know that they'll find a place to put it, I suspect. The other option, the two options for the funds not captured would be to just forego it for those previous years or bill the township for the $895.31.
Township or village? Because in the first bullet point, you said it was the village.
I guess it would be village in that one. Yeah, because the other is the township for the fire and rescue bond. Good point.
Jeff,
Yes.
you presented as two options, but why would we forego it? Excellent question.
Well, it would, I mean, they've probably already accounted for their revenues that they've captured and, you know, what their, what those dollars were slated for. So it would have to come out of some general fund of some form, I'm assuming. Because I doubt, you know, they don't have it on their books to show it that, at that point. So, you know, perhaps the option would be to just have the conversation with them and say, this is, you know, you didn't do this, and what would happen if we billed you guys for it? And they may say, well, we just pay you, cut you a check. I mean, it may not be a big deal in that regard. And I guess I'm not sure from a communication standpoint, you know, what the best approach is, you know, politically and so forth. But, you know, I would anticipate that. I think, if I'm not mistaken on this one, that I think we had a conversation with them, I want to say on this particular one, that, and they, one year did capture it, and then the next year they didn't. So we still got to get them on the same page with respect to what they're doing. Because it's not something, I mean, something that you need to understand as a Brownfield authority and a Brownfield plan, unless by statute certain villages are exempt from capture, unlike a DDA and other types of TIFA districts or so forth, you can't opt out of capture under a Brownfield. And so we got to make sure the township or the village understands that that's not an option. They have to continue to capture for those dollars.
So I think the two bullet points, second and third bullet point go together. Communicating with the village saying, this is what happened in the past. We can't keep repeating this. You can't opt out.
Correct.
You know, so it's having that conversation, educating them at the same time, saying, you know, you don't want us coming back after your books are closed each year, demanding, you know, the money that you've captured. This legally belongs to the, you know, and this time. So, you know, in a way, it's like, let's make them heard and have a struggle finding the right way to balance their books now, so they, going forward, they'll do it on the front end.
I agree. I don't think we have to be nasty about it.
No,
It's
it's just,
established this as a
and it's part of that training that you mentioned, is working with the entities and the treasurers and the, I guess what would be the treasurers.
I would anticipate that we would want to have a conversation with them outside of the training first, so they're not caught cold in a group with a group of people,
yeah.
you know, type of thing. So we would do that for sure. So they kind of have a heads up on that.
This is a brand new process for everybody in the county. So yeah, it's not being nasty, it is all about education, including for ourselves, so.
Do they have a new treasurer?
The village?
Yeah.
No. The township has a new treasurer.
So I guess what we would be probably recommending is that, you know, maybe there's a motion to return the ineligible capture to Suttons Bay Township of the $121.23, and then maybe a motion to bill the village for the $895.31 that wasn't captured.
Yes, so that would be two separate motions.
Correct.
So the first motion would be to return $121.23 to Suttons Bay Township.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Rick, second by Chet. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So that one is passed. Second motion would be to meet with the village and explain that they owe $895.31.
So moved. Support.
Motion by Rick, support by Dennis. Any further discussion?
Yeah, when you say need to, going to do this meeting.
That would be our director and our consultants, correct? That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And everyone said.
Amen.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of this motion? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so that is set. So that's bullet points 1, 2, and 3.
So as a clarification, was that motion to meet with the township to explain it, but also to bill them for the, what's that?
I had the village.
Yes.
Yeah, village, sorry, I'm sorry. I keep putting township, I don't know why. Okay,
Too many layers.
okay.
If you do them simultaneously, it doesn't hurt quite as much.
I wish the tax collector would knock on my door. Explaining things.
And then I guess probably the other recommendation for a motion would be, since we don't have any developer expenses, that the Brownfield Authority authorize dispersing the remaining $4,609.57 to reimburse the eligible expenses of the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority.
Okay.
So moved.
Who was the second? Rick. Okay, motion by Ty, second by Rick on that. So the fourth bullet point. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we move on.
And if I could, just real quickly, I don't know, it's not in your packet, but it was presented to you back at one of the previous meetings, the reimbursement analysis for 2Ps. So we have about 20, I think it's $29,000 in eligible costs that the Brownfield Authority incurred on that site. So that $4,000 that you authorized for disbursement would go against that. So what we would do is adjust the reimbursement analysis and show that payment, and it would reduce the eligible expenses accordingly.
Okay, so we move on to page 11 in the packet, the Leland analysis.
I apologize for the fine print, but it's kind of where we're at. So, so really, this is, I think, more of for just opportunity for you to see how everything is laid out from a standpoint of the expenditures, eligible expenditures that are expenses by the Brownfield Authority, and then the developer's eligible expense related to the 20% match on the revolving loan fund grant. You've already acted on returning funds to the, which one am I on here? Leland. So to the, for the school debt and the fire bond, so that's already in motion. You'll approve that in claims and accounts today. But I guess the remaining action is related to the funds that are available for disbursement, the $87,973.46. And I guess we need a motion at some point in time as to what to do with that money. I believe, Trudy, did you put that in? You did put that in claims and accounts.
I put the two amounts, the fire bond and the school debt in it.
Okay, but not the disbursement.
No,
Okay. So,
my thought was if there's a motion on that today, we could add that to a claims and accounts next month. Or adjust claims and accounts when we get to it.
Okay.
So I guess to reiterate, if you want me to, we've got funds that obviously the Brownfield Authority has obligations to repay. And you'll have an annual payment for that Eagle loan. And then at some point in time, there's a cost to reimburse to the revolving loan fund from the EPA loan grant loan, so to speak. And then the developer has an expense with respect to the match. I guess, again, your policy and the agreement from my review indicated that obligations by the authority would be addressed first before payment to the developer. I guess the other thing for you to think about, I guess, would be, although the developer has kind of somewhat moved forward, the properties have sold, there's been one building that's been constructed, but by all means, the anticipated development of those parcels has not come to fruition as we would anticipate in order to accommodate the debt service that's really there. So, this is somewhat of a performance-based program, to.
Right. For historical perspective for the members, we've wrestled with this in the past on paying ourselves back first. And we came to the realization that if we start paying the developers first, we will never get paid back, potentially. Or it will be so many years down the road that we won't have operating funds to keep the entity itself going. So like any good financial plan, decided to revamp our policies and procedures to align with the belief that we pay ourselves back and we cover ourselves for administration expenses and everything else that we weren't doing to start, just so we can keep putting the money back out into the community and running these programs. Otherwise, we're going to put ourselves out of business. So that's the history of it, and we keep bringing it up like it's an option, but in the past, we decided it wasn't an option anymore to pay the developer first. The option is that we have to pay ourselves first. So I just want to give that history. Thank you.
I think
Plus, if the TIFA works properly, the developer gets paid back.
Right, if their
If
development.
the TIFA is not working properly, then something's gone awry either in his marketing procedures or, particularly, and as far as I can, did I read in here somewhere that the Brownfield plan cost $800,000? Did I see that somewhere?
The plan itself didn't cost $800,000. Keep in mind that there was, under the Eagle loan, a lot of funds were utilized to do asbestos abatement and demolition of the government center and buildings and so forth. And then there was a fair amount of dollars that was spent to clean up some of the underground land and so forth.
But the Brownfield obligation, I thought I saw in here was like our initial cost that we put into it was $800,000.
Yes, that's true.
And if you back out the actual, what you might call analog activities, we were actually, removing asbestos and contamination and so forth. I wonder what was the rest. As a newbie, I don't know. I'm just out there pitching. Paying retained attorneys and that sort of thing, for descriptions of lots and surveying and that sort of. What did the Brownfield actually purchase? I mean, what did the board actually, other than the abatements itself?
Yeah, so
And I'm just,
yeah, right. So the Brownfield Authority used those funds to pay for site investigations on the property, to pay for asbestos abatement, paid for demolition of all the structures and disposal of all that material.
then we need to get paid back.
Yeah, and it paid for, and then we had, issues with contamination that we had to address. There were some water system issues that we had to address.
We had to put it in maintenance and security, and, I mean, we've handled a lot over the years on that site.
But that's,
You went through 2 or 3 developers before we finally found one. And to the defense of the current developer, he no longer owns those lands at all. He's
so,
sold them. It wasn't his intent to be responsible for construction, I believe, of the homes. It was a matter of getting it in place and selling the land with the anticipation that the individual property owners would build.
and then TIF will start to collect what it was supposed to.
Correct.
Which has not occurred yet.
It'll kick into gear quickly.
Well, keep in mind, I think we should be right now, based on the schedule, we should be at 4 or 5 homes already constructed on that property, and we're at 1. Well, I guess the townhome would count.
2 townhomes and the little house behind it, and
Oh,
then the
that's-
house by the old jail.
Right. There's a little
There's
house.
2 townhouses there.
Yeah, already.
Yeah, one was done, one was not done.
Yeah.
Just a shell.
It takes 2
So-
years to get a builder in these parts of this time, so.
Right. Well, true, but you sold the property to the developer in 2019?
Before that.
Is it 2018? I can't remember.
Probably.
Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've invested a lot of time in the last 10 years on that piece of property.
And just a general question, is the fire department part of that district or no? Property there,
It would have been included, but it's exempt because they don't pay taxes on it.
same project, but they had to go through the same abatement issues
Yeah,
and questions.
I'm trying to remember. Were there any?
Separate transaction.
That was a separate transaction. You're right. There was a separate transaction there because I don't think there were any previous buildings on.
No.
Well, there's the old fire station was there. Yeah. Yeah, that was a separate piece.
Any further
There it
discussion?
is. I highlighted it. $879,323 in local expenses.
Yep.
So yeah, I would move we pay that back.
Yeah, so we can either, make that motion now, or we can next month see see on paper that $87,000 dispersed for what specifically on schedule. I think that might be the best way to do it, is to see where we're applying that $87,000.
Yeah, is there anything that precludes us from making a real good faith effort to try to pay a developer? We take a big, is it all have to go to one place, can it go to several places?
No, I think it goes to several, because like admin is a certain percentage per year, and, so it does get broken down further, at $87,000.
I guess my recommendation would be that you focus on the debts that have a contract. I mean, you kind of have a contract with the EPA RLF grant, but EPA is not looking for their money back. Like I said, it was intended to capitalize a loan program for you locally. So that can happen down the way if you need to. I guess my thought would be that you focus on something that ultimately you owe. I mean, that you have a contract with.
I think we should look at that separately, at a future meeting.
And what we could do too on our reimbursement analysis here is, I know the expenditures are kind of lumped together. We could split those out between Eagle loan and RLF. And I guess we would have to anticipate with the, we should probably put an admin line in there so we can.
Yeah, I think that might be a separate table.
Versus put it on the reimbursement
Well, it
analysis?
depends on how many categories there are.
Well, it just can be broken into those pieces. I think if it's all together in one page there, then you can track it.
Okay,
I think we can make it clear.
Okay. So that's the update on Leland.
So, okay. So we're gonna wait, we're not gonna have a motion to disperse those funds at this point.
The 87,000, yes. That's my recommendation. We do have been part of that, the money going back to Leland Township. That's-
Correct.
Yeah, that's already in the claims and accounts.
Right.
Remaining amount, we'll look at separately at the moment.
Okay.
So what people would like,
I think that makes sense. Frankly. Gives you a better idea what you're actually voting on.
yeah, so we know, you know what the categories are of the
Right.
money, where we owe money.
Mhm.
Okay.
And that's what's portrayed in this reimbursement analysis. It does show you where your debt obligations are, with the exception of that 879, 323, 78 is not broken between the loan and the RLF, which we can do. And any admin that you want to use. Okay. G-Track. At this point, I think we have a, did that get included in here, Trudy? You should have that reimbursement analysis in there as well.
Yes, there's
There it is.
claims and accounts, we have a small amount reimbursed for school debt.
Right, so,
And then also to Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for tip reimbursement and to the county for the demolition.
yeah, lose track of my table here.
House.
Yeah, so you had a motion already to return 664.96. And like you said, Trudy, did you already had a motion on that, I believe? But I don't think we did. It's in your claims and accounts though, I believe, to reimburse.
Yeah, because there was a slight change in the amount for the county.
Right. Right, so really what we're looking at there is to reimburse the county and then the remaining funds to be reimbursed to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, that location as well.
And the school debt to the town.
And the school debt, right. And that reimbursement analysis on page 12 basically kind of shows that process there. And what is owed ultimately. So basically, Leelanau County will be made whole on the funds that they expended for the demolition and the asbestos survey and abatement. And then the Brownfield Authority will be partially reimbursed for their expenditures. So I would anticipate that we would probably finish out what goes to the Brownfield Authority with the next round of taxes, and there'll probably be some available to reimburse to the developer at that point in time.
any questions, discussion on that? So will we be needing an additional motion, Trudy, on any disbursement for G-Track?
I have it in claims and accounts.
Oh, it's already there, okay.
Yeah, although when we get there, I have a couple comments on
Okay,
just what I put together on the sheet. I'll need to make a few corrections.
okay, so we'll get there. All right. So all this leads to, the next item on our agenda is a management proposal to help us manage this process going forward.
So, Basically, what this proposal does is it involves a process that we would envision happening twice per year. Basically, what we would be doing is issuing statements of account to the various taxing jurisdictions or the tax collecting entities that will show the anticipated value of the parcel that's in the Brownfield plan or parcels in the plan, the anticipated capture, the millages that are going to be captured, and the amount that we anticipate capturing. Those statements of accounts would go to the taxing authority. They will look at them and they will say, yep, this matches, I agree, and that's what we will expect to see come to the Brownfield Authority. Or they'll say, no, something's wrong, we have a millage we added last year that you didn't put in, or the value is different than what we're calculating, and then we'll have to have a conversation to try to figure out what's the difference and hopefully make those adjustments so that we're in agreement. We anticipate doing that twice per year. Additionally, initially, as part of this proposal, we're going to be planning a training session with the taxing authorities to kind of go through this process so they understand it. But this is a one-year cycle, basically, to do that, as well as the annual reporting to MEDC. And I think it probably best shows what our anticipated schedule would be on page 17 of your packet, but it kind of just goes through, we're already a little behind to some extent, but we would try to coordinate scheduling the training initially, and then July, August, we're going to look at taxable values for the tax year and make sure those new values are in our spreadsheets and add any new millages that might be there. We'll work with the equalization to verify the millage rates. And we're going to send a letter, copy of the spreadsheet to each of the local units of government collecting the taxes and have them verify the summer millage rates, taxable values. And then obviously they'll receive the tax increment, disperse in accordance with the plan, and then we'll retain half of the set for 2Ps is the only one that we have to do that too. And then we have reports that are due, annual reports that are due to MEDC regarding the 4 active plans. That basically tracks your intermediate school districts, your county, local, and school millages. And then August timeframe, because of just timing of this thing, we're going to try to also at the same concurrently try to do that training with them as well as we do this. And then that would be repeat again in November, basically, where we'll send a new letter, copy the spreadsheet to each local taxing unit, verify the winter millage rates, and then receive the taxes and disperse according to those agreements. So in February, March timeframe of 2022. So it's that cycle, basically.
So this process would be an amendment to our contract with you,
Correct.
and this would be for 1 year. So each year, we'd have to do another amendment. It could go up, it could go down, depending on the number of plans we have.
Correct.
Okay.
I would be hopeful that, subsequent years, it's going to go down because it's going to take less communication, verification. Hopefully the process will be embedded, so to speak, so that the units of government understand the process. Because it's the initial stage, I think, is going to be more costly, obviously, to kind of get everybody on the same page.
But if we start having more brownfield plans, it could go up.
Correct.
Well, then it becomes more of a cut and paste thing.
To some extent, you're correct. Yeah, you initiate it into the system early on and have those conversations ahead of time with the taxing jurisdictions. And the intent really is, it's a choice really at some point in time. It might be the type of thing that this thing gets to a point where, maybe someone on Trudy's staff can do it and doesn't need us to do this. But I think initially it was intended. And we've found that some of the communities that we work with, initially we run it for them and then eventually they wean us off, so to speak, because the system's in place.
Which gets to Ty's question, because he said he wasn't going to be at this meeting. He was wondering if this was a proprietary spreadsheet. And I assume it's just like Word or Excel.
We don't have a trademark on it. We don't,
Anyone
it's,
can use it.
anybody can use it. It's Excel and we're, some people say, well, you should have trademarked, you should do this, should have copyright or whatever, but it's,
It's in the public record anyway.
yeah, it's in the public record anyways. And, if we had some kind of module design that plugged into BSNA software and, somehow it was a little bit more,
If you use a complete bill, I could go into the Excel spreadsheet and I could look at what your formula was and see if there was a mathematical error.
absolutely,
Making absolutely no sense.
absolutely. And we're happy to share those. So yeah, the proposal shows costs to do, kind of set up the training. I'm hopeful it'll be less than that myself, and then actually work towards implementation, making sure the process is working, and then actually doing the statements of accounts and the reimbursement analysis, and then the annual reporting. I think one of the things that we talked about, Trudy and I did, is that our contract extension with you ends at the end of December, so we're going to have to talk about whether you want another brief extension or what you want to do there. Because we anticipate this will extend into 2022 to get the winter taxes handled.
Okay. So that's the background information on the work order amendment that was in that,
Correct.
which is amendment number 7.
No,
No.
because we did this as a separate proposal versus an amendment to the work
Oh.
order.
The total's on page 14 of your business packet.
Correct.
So this does not constitute a work order.
We kind of just did it different. I guess we did it a little bit differently from
So I'm trying to figure out how to word this motion.
Jeff called it a TIF management proposal.
All right, so,
what I did, Kathy, was I referenced our contract. So this would be a proposal under our existing contract,
okay.
consulting contract.
So if we entertain a motion for a TIF management contract with EnviroLogic in the amount not to exceed $7,300 as proposed in the packet, that would be a motion.
As long as we can make sure it is not to exceed.
Yeah, that was the wording, not to exceed $7,300.
And to address T's question, it's not proprietary.
And that was addressed in the discussion so far.
I would second that motion.
You need someone to make the motion.
I thought you just did.
No, I'm not making it, I'm
There
just,
was
I'm
a
just
question
wording,
mark at the end of it.
I'm just wording.
Okay.
Why don't you make the motion as stated?
Can I make motions?
No, you can't.
I'll make the motion.
He didn't make what, John.
Dennis made the motion,
I'll
John
make the
seconded the
motion.
motion. Supported the motion. Any further discussion?
But can you read the motion?
I knew someone was gonna- Okay, it's rough. It's in the tape. Motion by Aaron, second by Boucher, to accept the proposal from EnviroLogic as presented in the agenda packet in an amount not to exceed $7,300. That good?
Thanks, sounds good to me.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes.
Donuts get you somewhere.
Yeah, well, figured I hadn't brought donuts in a year, I think.
I'm gonna give you a headache with these spreadsheets.
Yeah, they do, and I apologize for that, but hopefully
That's what shows that that's what it needs. It needs this
It takes-
dedicated
it will,
attention.
well,
Because we don't want anything coming back, saying, you treated a different brownfield plan differently and you paid the developer back over here, why aren't you paying me back? We do want to make sure that we're doing it the same across the board.
Set a good basis for you too going forward, hopefully on future plans. I
Right,
think you're gonna have some things coming
it'll get easier
at some point.
at some point. All right, so we move on to our financials. So we have our regular claims and accounts, which is largest month at 25,000 that goes to Eagle for a loan. So I don't know if our treasurer wants to make any motions for claims and accounts.
So this one starts on page 22 of your packet, and then the invoices are behind it on pages 23 through 26. So there's 2 invoices from Jeff for general services, and the other one from David Medina. We have $27,350 in this claims accounts.
So you could entertain a motion to pay the claims and accounts in the amount of $27,350.
Second.
Motion by Scott, second by Rick. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes. The second one is for the TIF claims and accounts, which we just reviewed, paying back, ourselves, paying back the county, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, Elmwood Township, Leelanau Township, and Sutton's Bay. And that's, oh yeah, and Trudy had comments on that.
Okay, so earlier in the meeting, you approved reimbursement to the Brownfield Authority for 2 Ps for $4,609.57. I didn't have that in claims and accounts, but I'm wondering if we're not actually going to write a check to ourselves because the money's already in our account. So for tracking purposes, do we need that in claims and accounts as well as the second item that's on page 27? The payment to Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for $21,807.90.
Jeff, do you know how that's done in other communities? Are we more or less allocating the money to the Brownfield Authority that we're gonna slide it from, say this category now into this category as reimbursement? Because I have to show this to the accounting department for the checks, and I don't think we're actually gonna write ourselves a check.
Yeah, because you have your own checking account, so you
Right.
write your own check.
So would that be in our transfers? Would that be an item number 3 on our?
I mean, that would be the way to do it. So that's gonna change the dollar amount on this claims and accounts if you pull off item number 2.
$33,000.
But it's still a debt obligation.
But it shows up as a transfer.
Or we can include it, but without a check number.
Right.
So we're not gonna write a
Right,
check.
could you put by transfer instead of check?
What we should probably do is 2 motions, one for a transfer and pay.
Okay, approach.
I guess the other way, I thought I was making this easy for you. Unless you want to take these individually and make a motion on them, and we could skip the one to the Brownfield Authority, I could figure that out with the accounting department. So you do one for Leelanau County, item 1, and then go to what should be 3, Elmwood Township, 4, Leland Township, and then 5, Sutton's Bay.
Or if we subtract that number 2 out.
And the other correction is under the last one, Sutton's Bay, I'm off 10 cents, it should be $121.23. So if you want to take out number 2, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority expense, I will check with the accounting department on that one and the amount you approved previously on 2Ps and find out how we handle that. If it's a transfer, I can bring that back next month. And then just do the other ones, which would be checks to these, to the other ones, to Leelanau County, Elmwood Township, Leland Township, and Suttons Bay Township.
I suggest we just go through them one at a time and vote 4 times. It won't take us too long, but vote 5 times. 2 number 2s then.
So you want to start with making some motions, Rick?
I make a motion that, do we have to write a check to Leelanau County or is that a transfer?
It'll be a check.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about the check number or the line item. I will
Okay.
take care of that with the county department.
Okay. I vote, item number 1, Leelanau County, that we pay the $29,155 to Leelanau County.
Support.
Motion by Rick, support by Ty. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That one passes.
I vote that we transfer to the Brownfield Authority.
We're going to skip that one.
Okay.
I'm gonna bring it back next month for you.
Okay. I move that we pay Elmwood Township the TIF reimbursement of $664.96.
Support.
Motion by Rick, support by Ty. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That one passes.
I vote that we pay Leland Township the TIF reimbursements totaling $2,425.59.
Support.
Motion by Rick, support by Ty. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That one passes.
And I vote we pay Suttons Bay, is that township or is that the town?
That's township on this one.
Township, the TIF reimbursements for 2Ps development are a total of $121.23.
Support.
Motion by Rick, support by Ty. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That one passes.
Here you go, Rick. Moving along.
All right, so we don't have any post-audit budget amendment and transfers for this month, correct, Trudy? Correct. But we need for next month. So any other correspondence, communication items? Any public comment? Again, the number to call in for the public is 231-256-8109. Any further director comments?
No.
Any member comments?
Thank you, Jeff.
Welcome.
Then we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Hi, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.